This is IGN. A more personal story that doesn't move the needle in the overall Calvard saga much. This is your IGN review of The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2 by George Yang. The concept of a multiverse is one that often seems to fit video games very naturally. Ratchet & Clank, Rift Apart, and BioShock Infinite both took good advantage of it to open their stories up to new possibilities, for example. But The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2 has hopped on the multiverse train with some mixed results. At times, its story doesn't seem to go anywhere for hours on end, but it has some of the best character development the series has ever seen in exchange for that momentum. Daybreak 2 also introduces meaningful improvements to its hybrid action/turn-based combat, making it more engaging than ever before. The outcome is an RPG with pacing struggles, but still manages to be a good sequel in an already great series. Daybreak 2 takes place shortly after the events of the previous game, following your mercenary hero Van Arkwright and his friend Elaine as they encounter a mysterious but familiar-looking red monster. In an entertaining twist, that first encounter actually ends with both Van and Elaine dead, with Van's assistant Agnes somehow rewinding time in an act of desperation to save them. It's an explosive setup that introduces the timeline hopping mechanic in an interesting way, but rather than making the most of a multiverse's potential for effective and emotional storytelling like the excellent Zero Escape series, Daybreak 2 mostly uses it as a deus ex machina to let the party opt out of sticky situations. This causes the main story to be too drawn out over the roughly 60-hour campaign, and the mystery behind that crimson monster takes an unfortunate backseat as Van constantly dies in different timelines and tries to find a way to avoid his fate, sometimes going out in overly silly ways, like randomly stepping into a room filled with explosives. Being forced into bad endings like this just adds tedium, and hopping back in time gets particularly annoying in Chapter 3, as its sporadic use makes the story's flow feel choppy. However, even when the overarching tale falls flat, Daybreak 2 is filled to the brim with some of the best character development in the series. For example, the group's researcher and tech geek Quatre comes to terms with his upbringing and his abusive cultish parents, while Fairy, a young and naive mercenary, finds her inner sense of self after being kicked out of her family in the previous game. This is essentially the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 of the Trails series. It doesn't move the larger plot forward much, but the more personal, character-driven stories it focuses on instead are excellent. The Trails series is known for its in-depth side quests, and Daybreak 2 is no different. They offer incredible amounts of world building, along with useful rewards such as rare items to help out Van and his friends on their journeys. The customization system remains virtually unchanged from its predecessor as well, but it still offers a great degree of flexibility when building out your party. And thankfully, Daybreak 2 has brought back minigames that its predecessor noticeably removed. Not only is the fishing minigame back, it's been revamped and simplified for the better. The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2 makes a few missteps with the pacing and structure of its multiversal story, but it's buoyed by a focus on quality character moments and impressive world building over earth-shaking reveals. The turn-based combat and party customization haven't changed much at all, but they didn't really need to, and the real-time action side of things has seen some small but meaningful improvements. Daybreak 2 didn't move the needle in the overall Calvard saga as much as I'd hoped, but this more personal story is still another good entry in the Trails series overall. The Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2's IGN score? 7 out of 10. Thanks for listening to IGN. My name is Tony Jackson, and for the latest updates on this game and more, visit us at IGN.com.
Spoken Layer.